Back in the Horseshoe after our trip to Beaver Stadium. It's the Monday after Ohio State 20, Penn State 13. Number 4 over number 3. Ohio State now number 3. Penn State now number 6. But the rankings don't really matter because the CFP rankings are coming out on Tuesday. We might get into a little bit of that at the end of this program. That's the 41-year vet Tim May. That's Andy Backstrom. But first, we're going to start by breaking down the rewatch, everything we learned, Andy. We've watched it 2, 3, 4 times. The goal line stand maybe 15 times. The rushing drive at the end of the game maybe 25 times. On all these rewatches, what have you learned in the aftermath of Ohio State 20, Penn State 13, a statement win for the Buckeyes?
There was a lot of concern about the offensive line going into this game, and one of those big concerns was the short yardage situations because it felt a little 20-23-ish in that Nebraska game. They were 2 of 6 on 3rd or 4th and short in that game against the Cornhuskers. Against Penn State, they were 5 of 5 in those situations. They converted a 4th and 1, and they converted 4 other 3rd and shorts. And I think that makes a big difference, especially at the end of the game. A couple of Will Howard runs on 3rd and short. You think about, early in the game, you have a quarterback sneak with Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins up there along with the rest of the lot, pushing him forward for the first down. That jump starts the first touchdown drive of the game for Ohio State. So those short yardage situations that Ryan Day has just been trying to hammer home like the last few years really came to fruition against Penn State.
Play like I've got an offensive MVP award and you're Carson Hinsman. Here you go, Carson. Excellent job. Way to step in the breach. I know you started 12 games last year. Everybody forgotten about you. You just hold it because you put it on your mantle later. Okay. And everybody forgot about you below these many months. Yet when Ohio State needed somebody with experience, needed to fix something that looked like it was almost unfixable in a lot of people's eyes, you stepped up. As Ryan Day said, as I said before the game, and I'm patting myself on the back a little bit, I said, why wouldn't you start Carson Hinsman? I'm talking about on a radio show. He started 12 games last year. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't be walking into a situation he hasn't been in the past at Southern. That's exactly what Ryan Day said. They went with experience. Mm-hmm. And boy, did it pay off. I'm not sure Carson Hinsman wasn't the offensive lineman of the week. I mean, I watched, and they started leaning on him in that left side. Seth McLaughlin at center and Donovan Jackson shooting out to left tackle. But what a tour de force by those guys. Just when everybody giving up on the offensive line and the running game, boom, up steps the offensive line and the running game, especially Quinshon Judkins. And the way Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson blocked was savage.
Yeah.
So you got to give it up to them when it's worthy, and it was definitely worthy.
Yeah, 4 of the 5.
Don't step on that trophy.
4 of the 5 starting offensive linemen were the offensive players of the game for the program. The only one that wasn't was Tegra Shabola. And Pro Football Focus gave him a very high grade. Carson Hinsman was, I think, the highest graded guy.
He was, so I was right.
The highest graded offensive lineman that they gave out. Tegra was the second highest. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm really anxious to see Ryan Day's answer as to why Tegra wasn't included in that. I thought the offensive line, from left to right, top to bottom, however you want to say it, played really, really well. And that includes a guy like Josh Fryer, who doesn't get all the attention, but there are some concerns from time to time with him in pass blocking. We didn't know what Donovan Jackson would do on the left side. We didn't know how Carson Hinsman would play. From everything I've heard from some people in the building, like the last few weeks have been Carson Hinsman really starting to step up, and maybe this was building anyway, that he was going to emerge and start to play a little bit. But to see him do it in that spot next to Donovan Jackson, who you wrote about on LettermenRow.com, like it was a lot of working together last year at center and guard. Now it's a lot of working together at guard and tackle. They have their best 5. This is going to be the offensive line pairing, I guess. It's going to be the 5 offensive linemen moving forward. They were fantastic. I know that there's some pressures involved. Donovan Jackson gave up 2 sacks. Some other guys gave up some pressures. I didn't think it was leaky, though. I just thought there were individual reps that Abdul Carter and some of those guys on the Penn State defensive line won, which you're going to have in any game. You're going to lose an individual rep in any game, but top to bottom, like this offensive line was fantastic, Andy.
Yeah, I wrote about it in my story for LettermenRow.com that the last time that Carson Hinsman and Donovan Jackson played together was the Michigan game. And of course, that final play, the game-ending interception that Kyle McCord had, that Rod Moore picked off and sealed the deal for Michigan. Well, Donovan Jackson tripped over Carson Hinsman. That was 343 days before this game against Penn State. They're finally playing alongside each other once again, and it went a lot differently in this time. There was no tripping. They stepped up, rose to the occasion, and both played really well.
God, just think if that hadn't happened. Would Kyle McCord still be here?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's the butterfly effect on that.
I mean,
thing.
you talk about butterfly, flapping his wings in the northern Africa, and the hurricane coming. Bottom line is, you got to give kudos to the coaching staff and everybody else because.
Well, say his name, Tim. Justin Fry, who's been much, maligned.
I was going to get to his name.
Yeah.
But you got to get to that. You got to get to that point where we're going with this lineup. This is going to be our salvation. That's right. Carson Hinsman actually played pretty well at times last year as a starting center. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
We still aren't clear what they were doing there.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of why Carson Hinsman became a forgotten soul. It makes really, I'm talking about after Donovan Jackson couldn't go at the beginning of the season, and you've got Austin Serveld in there who actually played well as the season went on. Mm-hmm. Luke Montgomery goes in place when Zen Mikowski went down 2 weeks ago. I mean, what were you doing there? And was Carson Hinsman's sin that bad? I mean, it sure seems like it, but we've never gotten a straight answer on that. So that is what it is. Bottom line is, you're right. They've got their line now for the rest of the season. That's a knock on wood or knock on concrete situation for them too, because obviously they'd like to have the original line they started with.
Yeah, but it's been, a plenty of different combinations that did work. The Oregon game, Zen Michalski was in there at left tackle. Then he was in there for the Nebraska game. Again, we're not trying to shovel dirt on this guy, but it didn't work, and that's become clear now that we've seen what did work against Penn State. And I do wonder, and I don't know if we'll ever get an answer on this, but I do wonder how many reps Donovan Jackson took during that off week, during the stretch from Oregon to Nebraska, and if they were just working him into that left tackle spot rather than just throwing him out there against Nebraska. I don't know if we'll ever get an answer on that, but the way that he played, and again, I don't know if we should just continue to heap praise on this offensive line because they still got to do it more often, but to do it in that spot, Andy, it's just
in those conditions. It's
just kind of crazy. And then you pile on the pick six there at the beginning of the game, and the very next drive, which was 10 seconds later, they had to go back out there with the loudest crowd that they've played in front of. And I think it was even louder than the Oregon game, but we couldn't hear it that well because we were in the press box and it wasn't open air like the Oregon game. That place was rocking.
Yes.
And for them to have no pre-snap penalties on the entire day as an offensive line unit, for them to block up front on that ensuing drive to allow Will Howard time to get to the end zone and throw a really nice pass to Emeka Egbuka, for them to settle in like that deserves just as much praise as the final 5-minute drive where they ran off the clock and allowed these guys to run through lanes and move them down the field to win the game, Andy. I thought that response drive to make it 10-7 was just as important as the 5-minute drive to ice the game.
Mm-hmm. And both of those drives had a quarterback sneak.
Yeah.
And Will Howard said after the game, our offensive line's so good at that. We're almost gaining 5 yards a carry. Not quite. It's 2.8. That's still really, really good.
Is it really 2.8 on sneaks?
According to Pro Football Focus, which is really good. They've done it 8 times this season. 6 have been first downs. The other 2 have been from right near the doorstep of their end zone, getting out of that situation. And both times it's worked really well, even though the officials kind of shortcut them on the one against Nebraska. But still, this one against Penn State at the 1-yard line got them 4 yards. That changes things completely. Then you get that first down, you're thinking about getting the second first down, and then the third first down. And suddenly you're not just punting for field position and to get yourself out of that situation. You're trying to finish the game, which they couldn't do against Nebraska in their 4-minute offense. And I know that frustrated Ryan Day and this offensive staff. They were able to do it this time. But yeah, I think maybe shift to Will Howard a little bit to bounce back. He's bounced back every time this season he's made a mistake. He makes mistakes. There's usually 1 or 2 plays a game he would want back. Usually, maybe it's a turnover, maybe it's a missed throw downfield. He had more of those against Penn State than maybe he's had in any other game this season.
Yeah.
But he made the plays when it mattered most, and especially with his legs on those final 2 runs. The first one was a zone read. The first one actually was just a quarterback sweep, that Quinshot Judkins had a great block on.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then the second one was the zone read where G. Scott had a really good block to kind of seal the deal, and he slid fittingly to end the game.
Well, somebody said real quick, Tim, somebody said on social media that second one, G. Scott blocking that end, it was a read, but they also blocked the guy that was supposed to take the quarterback, and so there was no chance for them to stop that. I thought that was really interesting. I don't remember who said it on social media, but it was that once it was pointed out to me, I was like, oh man, they really knew that he was going to keep it and be able to get that first down. And he would have scored a touchdown if he wanted to, and he just decided to swap.
Sweep to me.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, what was interesting in that jam-packed interview room with Will Howard saying it was one of the worst games of his life, or luckily all these other guys bailed him out. I'm telling you, except for like 3 plays, I thought that was one of the best games I've seen a quarterback play at Ohio State in those kind of conditions, setting yourself up for being down 10-0 on the road in one of the toughest places to play in America. I thought he played extremely well with his arm and his feet. There were a couple of plays he'd like to have back, but like one, the deep ball to Jeremiah Smith. That was a well-thrown deep ball.
Perfect.
That Jeremiah Smith, it was hard to tell because you're not looking until you're sort of like looking where the ball. It looked like he kind of got jammed by a couple of defenders there, and because he did slow down, stop running for a half second.
I think he lost in the sun.
Yep. Well, that's what I hypothesized when I first saw it. But when I saw the replay, he slowed down and then sped back up. So, and it wasn't just the sun there. Those lights were on to balance the lighting in the stadium. Boy, you look back at those things were glaring also. I'm talking about the stadium lights. So, but the point is, that was a hell of a pass.
Yeah.
That didn't pay off. And otherwise, we'd be talking about him in a totally different way, definitely, if he hadn't lost that ball on the fumble going in at the pylon, which I'm not sure how they judged that the ball went over the pylon. Based on the replays I saw, there was no good angle for that. His left foot ended up hitting the pylon, but it looked like the ball was left of his left foot. So it was what it was. It was a turnover, a touchback for Penn State. But, man, they get that touchdown.
Well,
I'm not sure Penn State has an answer after that.
Yeah, we'll stick with the offense here because there is one area, I guess, of concern, but you had the ball twice against Oregon, and I've said this a lot. You had the ball twice against Oregon with a chance to take a 2-score lead, and neither time you score. The first one was Quinshon Judkins. You're up 7-0. Quinshon Judkins fumbles. Oregon takes in a 6. Well, it was 7-6 because they missed the extra point, but they went down and scored a touchdown to make it, almost not a tie game, but a 1-point game instead of a 1-score game. And then the second one was when Will Howard dropped the perfect snap that just went through his hands. And then they had to punt on a drive where it looked like they were moving the ball. That was also out of the shadow of their goal line. So they were 0 for 2 in that regard. Against Penn State, they had the ball 5 times, not counting the last drive where they weren't trying to score. They were trying to milk the clock. They had the ball 5 times, 5 different possessions with a chance to go up 2 scores, and they were 0 for 5 in that regard. You talk about the missed throw down the field to Carnell Tate that was wide open. The Jeremiah Smith deep ball, I think that's on Jeremiah. I thought that was maybe Will Howard's best deep ball of the year, and it just didn't connect because of whatever you want to blame it on, that's fine, but it didn't connect. He fumbled out of the end zone, and that wasn't good. Like, for being down 10-0, this offense had chances to go up 2 scores so many times, Andy, and didn't get it done. And I think there's some concern in that where, you don't have that dagger that you can, twist the knife on the road in a top 5 matchup, but also
a little gruesome there. To
keep hanging in there and to keep throwing those punches, and then the defense to keep stepping up like that. Like, I thought it did show some maturity of this offense. Like, okay, like we're still good. Settle in. Like, keep trying to move the ball. You get those 2 second-half field goals. Like, I thought it was a good, mature outing from this offense in that regard too.
With this kind of game, the Penn State-Ohio State game, from everything I've seen and read and going back the history of the game, it's hard to go up 2 scores.
Sure is.
So, that's almost the nature of this game. I think for an Ohio State fan, you have to be really happy with the fire that Will Howard plays with. Ryan Day said there was a look in his eye this week. They just weren't going to lose the game. There was obviously emotion going back to Pennsylvania. He, felt a little bit slighted with his recruiting process, wasn't recruited by Penn State, which is a little bit close to 3 hours away from Downingtown, Pennsylvania, where he's from. Wanted to prove a point. Again, didn't play his best game, but in moments where it really counted, he stepped up. And I think that, watching his press conferences the last couple of weeks, he brings a passion to the game that I think is really important for this team. There's a lot of talk about maybe they didn't have an edge, maybe they didn't have what it took leadership-wise. I think that can all be put to bed after this week. Not only has Will Howard been doing that, I think... Who
said that?
Oh, Tim. It was all over the radio. It was all over the internet. That was basically a big narrative going into this game.
Watch it.
I agree with you, Tim. I didn't see that, this season, but that was a big concern going into this game. I think Will Howard's been that leader all season. I also think there's other guys, whether it's defensively or on offense as well, that have been carrying that torch as well. And you kind of saw that as the game ended. There was a lot of passion, whether it's Ryan Day hugging Chip Kelly afterwards and that really emotional embrace there, him meeting with Ted Carter and Ross Bjork. This was a big moment after the game of kind of a relief, but also a statement. I'll be the first to admit, I was really concerned about this offensive line. They shut everyone up. Mm-hmm. And I think, Spencer wrote about it in his column after the game, physicality, maybe one of the most physical, if not the most physical win of the Ryan Day era, you could argue.
Yeah. I think the only one that I can think of that would be different is maybe the 2019 Penn State game, where the narrative going in was that Penn State was giving up, I think, like 50 yards a game on the ground. And Ohio State got the ball starting down here inside the 10-yard line, and J.K. Dobbins had like 81 rushing yards, and they scored a touchdown right away. And it was like, okay, like, they're going to be able to run the ball in Penn State. That's the only game that I could think of this entire time where, like, we questioned their physicality and their toughness, and that was a week before the Michigan game even. So, like, they still were trying to prove themselves, even though they had been just smearing teams throughout the season.
In our bold predictions, did not predict Quinshon Judkins would hit 100 or plus.
I think so, yeah.
Wrong.
I know. Golly, just give him the ball one more time. You know what I mean? But I'm telling you something. There is a guy that came to play, especially in the second half. If you just isolate on his blocks, forget about his running game, like y'all were talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
He was just blowing people up. Yeah. Travion Henderson, same thing. You can't go, through this entire video, and we've already touched on it, without praising what you're seeing from the running backs and blowing people up, blocking.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole team wanted that game, not just Will Howard. I mean, it was obvious the way, like I said, Carson Hinsman was playing. Seth McLaughlin should be the All-Big Ten center based on what I've seen so far.
He might be the All-American center, Tim.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the kid at Indiana is playing his rear end off also, by the way. We'll get to that in a couple of weeks, I'm sure, if not in 5 minutes. But the bottom line is the way that whole offense just physically said they're gonna win the street fight, and that's exactly what they ended up doing at the end of the game. And it was sort of unexpected by many. I thought they were going to congeal, if in fact that's the correct term.
Yeah.
And come after. That's why I made a couple of those bold predictions like that, because I thought this played right into their hands. And but Will Howard was the leader of the gang. He was the gang leader that made it happen, because when he ran hard. Yes, too bad about the fumble at the goal line. Otherwise, you'd be going, oh my goodness, one of the great games of an Ohio State quarterback ever, instead of one of the worst games by Will Howard.
Yeah.
Ohio State fans, let me tell you something about Rhoback activewear. There's only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback just released their new game day collection, and it's awesome. With novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else in the market is pairing this level of custom designs with the quality of activewear. Rhoback does it better. Rhoback's everyday short are the perfect pairing as well. They are comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short, but the comfort of athletic shorts. Rhoback is also proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama, Quinn Ewers, quarterback at Texas, former Buckeye, and Ohio State safety Caleb Downs, one of your favorite players on the team. I know it. Among others, they're becoming the go-to brand for college athletes. They've got a lot of Ohio State stuff, the Block O on some things, Ohio State logos all over those polos. Use the code Lettermen20 on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of the week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Lettermen20. Go check it out. Rhoback Activewear. Enter the code Lettermen20 for 20% off your first purchase from our friends over at Rhoback. I've been rocking the Rhoback hoodie for a long time. Come join the fun. You've been wanting Rhoback. Now you've got a chance to get some Rhoback and get the Ohio State logo on Rhoback. Go to Rhoback.com, Lettermen20 for 20% off your first purchase from the folks over at Rhoback.
Well, and he said after the game he obviously wanted the pick six back, but
of course, that was a nonchalant kind of throw, as I even pointed out. He did not expect that guy to be there.
He had a slant on the next drive too to Jeremiah Smith,
Yeah.
where I was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Like, buckle up."
Yeah.
And then he throws the perfect touchdown pass to Emeka Egbuka. Let me transition us from offense to defense by talking about the offense a little bit and then getting to the defense. I thought the whole game was super fitting that, again, Andy, there were some questions about leadership on this team and who made big plays time and time again. Your running backs, who you think of as your leaders, were blocking their tails off, like you guys said. Those guys are your leaders. They set the tone. Yeah, Donovan Jackson played really well. He's one of the leaders of this team. Will Howard, bouncing back, a leader of this team, throwing 2 touchdown passes. And the 2 touchdown passes were to Emeka Egbuka, who's a team captain, and Brandon Inniss, who I think is a future captain, and a guy who talked in the preseason with me off to the side at one point about how much he wanted to be a young leader. I think they're getting a lot. They got a lot against Penn State out of the people who think that they're the leaders of this team. And that makes it so you not only think you're a leader, but you become a leader. For a guy like Brandon Inniss to go on the road in that environment and catch a touchdown pass when your backup receivers are on the field, I don't care if it was wide open. That's a massive moment that people can say, like, okay, that guy's done it in the biggest battle before. He automatically takes a little bit more of that step as a leader. Emeka Egbuka proves himself as a leader. Will Howard, these offensive linemen, the running backs, they prove themselves as leaders. You got the most that you needed to out of your leaders on offense. And then you also got the most that you needed to out of your leaders on defense. JT Tuimoloau has a sack. Cody Simon and Sonny Styles lead this team in tackles. They were fantastic against Penn State, especially on the goal line stand. Caleb Downs, how fitting to make the fourth down pass breakup when he was kind of bear hugging the guy, but you're not going to throw that flag on 4th and goal from the 1 yard line. I just thought the leaders of this team stepped up when they absolutely had to. From Caleb Downs to the defensive linemen to the linebackers who played really well, Davison Igbinosun, obviously, like the guys that you needed to step up, they all stepped up.
Catching Warren was out in the left flat on that 4th down play.
Yeah, defending him.
Allar had to come back inside. Number 2, that receiver coming off the edge there for Penn State initiated the contact, wanted contact with Caleb Downs. You know, a lot of times you're hoping for a flag as much as you are for a catch and stuff. Well, Caleb Downs slow played that about as well as you can. I mean, I was extremely impressive. But you're right, Lathan Ransom, you know, he wasn't there last week, the previous week.
And honestly, we didn't think he was going to play this week.
Correct. Well, we did. Yeah, we did. Middle of the week, we knew he was going to play. But the bottom line was those 2 guys came up big when they had to on that particular play. A lot of guys did. The middle of that defensive line on those first 3 downs, after Penn State got down there on that Warren run, you can't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
The way they just made it basically a stalemate, and then guys came over the top. Cody Simon, Caleb Downs, and some other guys.
Yeah, so I did the breakdown on LettermenRow.com, Andy. It was each play, give a player of the play for those 3 goal line stand plays, and then obviously the pass play. Caleb Downs gets that because he had the pass breakup. It was Caden McDonald on 3rd down driving the Penn State center 3 yards into the backfield.
Back.
The play before, it was the 2 linebackers meeting Tyler Warren and Katron Allen, the running back who had the ball, and just making sure that they did not get that extra yard.
Yeah.
It was on 1st down, Sonny Styles stepping up, putting a hat in the hole, and making basically a solo tackle in the middle of all of that. Like, that was a goal line stand, I think, that will live in Ohio State lore forever. And that it was, to see them, lack of a better term, big dumb football guys, see them sack up like that and just like, you are not getting this yard. I was super impressed.
3rd straight game with a goal line stand.
Yeah.
There was one in the Oregon game as well that I think we would be talking about more if that game had gone a different way. But
but plus the drive after it, that's
drop
when
the snap.
Will Howard had to drop the snap after it looked like they were going to really convert and flip it.
Right. So this time they get the goal line stand and then they finish the game.
Yeah.
With their rushing offense, 10 straight runs before that final kneel down by Will Howard. But yes, great goal line stand. I thought Cody Simon played so well again for the 2nd week in a row. You know, again, against Nebraska, finishes the game off with those back-to-back tackles for loss. He's the blocko, he's the captain, and he had 7 tackles in the first half. He finished, I believe, with a team-high 10. A bunch of those were solo tackles. He also had a sack that kind of jump-started the sequence in the second half, back-to-back sacks. The second one was a combined sack of JT Tuimoloau and Kenyatta Jackson.
Who played well.
That led to the second field goal, which was a big one, an insurance field goal for Ohio State to put them up 7.
Yeah.
instead of just 4. And I think, we also have to give some credit to Jaden Fielding for making 2 really, really big kicks. The first one was into the student section of Penn State with all those white pom-poms flying around, and 46-yarder, his longest of the season, coming off a week where he really missed badly on a 40-yarder, 42-yarder.
Yeah.
Wide right. He made 2 big ones against Penn State. But yes, that 2-sack sequence, I think, was as big as any in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting because as this season goes along, there are guys emerging we weren't talking a lot about, maybe not even talking about it at all. But if you remember before the game, I was wondering who was going to get the Benjamin Victor Award for a receiver against Penn State making a play, and it was Brandon Ennis.
Yeah.
And he actually had another one on a conversion, I think, for a first.
It was 2nd and 10. Yeah, he converted one.
10, exactly. So there you go. But then, like the names you just popped off, some of them, it's just guys are bubbling up along with the regulars.
How about Jelani Thurman?
Jelani Thurman, he caught that ball 5 times, but he caught it. A play that was blown up, right?
Yeah.
But he still converted. Too bad they didn't get the total payoff from that one.
Right.
But the bottom line was that's what's always intrigued me about this team. I thought they had this great creme de la creme, but there were guys that could rise up as the season goes on. Like Ryan Day said at the beginning of the year, you almost have to in a season where you expect it to be at least 16 games.
Yeah.
So Carson Hinsman, is another one. He was a forgotten soul, fellas. I think y'all agree with me on that. And yet there he is playing a huge role in the biggest win so far of this year. So, and then that defensive line, Tyleik Williams goes out.
And you think, okay, they're on the goal line and there's no Tyleik.
They're done.
And who is it? I was getting ready to follow up on this.
I know.
Folks, I'm letting you know, and it might not happen fully until next year.
All right.
There is a future star on this defensive line, and his name is Caden McDonald.
Yes.
Ohio State.
I'm not sure you didn't already.
Ohio State will not shut up about this guy, and he wasn't getting near enough playing time, in my opinion. He wasn't making the impact plays that justified them talking as much as he was, but he was on the field and looking like he could be like the future of this line, but not really ready yet, especially when they were missing Tyleik for a couple weeks out here. He's here because the confidence that you can get from a 3rd and goal from the 1, where you drive what's probably a second or third team all-conference center deep into the backfield, make an offensive lineman take a wide detour around you and basically ruin that play for him, and then allow everybody else to get into the hole that you created and stifle the run game. That can do wonders for a guy. And we've been trying to figure out if this team has like that Georgia defensive line where you can just have them come in waves and the athleticism and the dominance keeps attacking. They showed that against Penn State, and the weird thing is they hadn't shown it yet this year. And they showed it against Penn State in large part because Caden McDonald played those 10 snaps and he played really, really well. Kenyatta Jackson started stepping up and I thought played his best game as a Buckeye. Like,
I agree.
You're seeing these guys settle into those backup roles and start to make that push that we thought they might make in the Akron and Western Michigan and Marshall game. It might be coming a little later than we expected, but it seems like it's here, Andy. And in this defensive line, if they get those guys playing better and playing well behind the starters, like you're talking about a unit that's going to be feared down the stretch of this year.
You do need a little bit more from Jack Sawyer.
You sure do.
I think that was tough to watch, the unblocked almost sack that didn't happen there.
He's so close
on that first
so
drive.
Many sacks.
Yeah, and only a couple pressures in this game, and his pressure count, he still leads the team in 27 pressures, only 2.5 sacks this season, and those pressures have been coming less and less over the last few games. So they definitely want to get more out of him. I'm sure he's frustrated about it. You know how hard he works. He's a captain of this team. He's still really important to the defense. He's a good run defender, but they definitely would like to see more from him, and I think they just need more from him going down the stretch.
I thought JT Tuimoloau stepped up.
I thought he played a good game.
Yeah.
I thought he played a really good game.
No, he did.
I think the last several games he's played pretty well. The level you think he should play. And the other thing is, going back to what you were just talking about, Arvell Reese was in there a lot. I mean, you know what I mean? That's right on down the line. They were in that 4-3 a lot, it appeared.
They went 4-4 on the goal line, too, with C.J. Hicks.
Of course they did. It's on the goal line.
Yeah.
But C.J. Hicks, I mean, like I'm saying, everybody has a role on this team. Sometimes it's not the big-time, over-the-top starring role, but when it's your number and your number's called, you make a play. And we saw that on Saturday, which is I think just speaks volumes for this team, the development of the guys, et cetera, and then trusting the guy to put him in there in that kind of situation. It's crazy. But boy, like you talked about, your stars have got to be your leaders. Caleb Downs, man, he made quite a few plays on Saturday that went unheralded. And then, of course, on the last play. But then Lathan Ransom, you could see how settled things were with them both back there again. Yeah. Not knocking anybody else who played like the week before, but that bodes well for this football team moving forward. And Tyreek Williams, it looks like it's not remember he gave Jim Knowles a hug after the game and stuff. Doesn't look like that's going to be a long-term issue for him at all. So you got a couple of games where, guys can rest.
Yeah, Purdue's terrible. So we'll see. I don't know. You could probably play some of these.
Purdue is not good.
Yeah, Purdue's bad.
I still don't understand the Illinois game. Somebody have to explain that one to me.
Well, we'll explain it to you later. We don't have to do it on this show. Okay, so we'll spin this forward. Ohio State, Purdue, Northwestern, and then the two big ones at the end of the year. We're still talking about Michigan as a big one. I don't care that they're 5-4. I don't care that they've lost to teams that, that maybe they wouldn't have lost to the last few years. Like, that's still a big one. Indiana is obviously a big one, but first they've got to go Purdue, then at Northwestern in the baseball stadium the next 2 weeks. I don't know. I'm just going to end the show with the question to you guys. What do you want to see from this team in the next 2 weeks, Andy? Because I'm not going to say that, we don't have a lot that we can learn here, but, these two games are going to be games that Ohio State is supposed to absolutely dominate these teams. And all signs point to them doing just that.
I think you can learn a lot. They can't take their foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And the offensive line, you want to see more of it, right? So dominate in the trenches, back-to-back games, run the football a lot, establish that balance that Ryan Day wants, that Chip Kelly wants. They ran for 176 yards in this game. They didn't throw for more than 200. I think they were 180-something in this game. It was very balanced, and they want that balance, and that's going to make their offense even better. Everything that Will Howard does, he can throw the ball, but it's predicated off the run. That he's at his best at play action, and you want to be able to have that running game going. I think you can establish it even more. You get more time with Donovan Jackson at left tackle because, let's be honest, he was great and it was admirable and it was a valiant performance, but he was not perfect in that game. No one would be. It was a tough situation, a tough defense to be facing. They need to get him more comfortable at left tackle going forward. There's a lot I think you can look for on the offensive line. And then defensively, we've seen a bit of a resurgence the last two games since the Oregon game. Jim Knowles a little bit more free, and the creativity he's been able to test out with his defense with pressures and coverages. And so maybe we get to see a little bit more over the course of the next 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, I am anxious to see if he continues that trend of going back toward what he was doing at Oklahoma State. It did look like he was getting there, and I promised him.
You keep interrupting me. Ladies and gentlemen, he keeps interrupting me.
Yeah, I keep trying to move this thing along. I'm wondering if he goes back to the 4-3 and that kind of stuff and the 4-2-5 that we saw early in the season, or if he continues the trend of starting to lean into what he did at Oklahoma State, because we're seeing more of that. We saw a lot of that against Penn State. I thought it looked like a new Jim Knowles defense, and I wonder if he tucks it back in his back pocket and saves it for the Indiana game, or if he continues to spice things up with different stuff. That's one thing that I am looking for.
What
Tim
showed was he liked the way they matched up against Penn State, personnel-wise, and in the 4-3 especially. I thought that was the way to go. I don't think there was any doubt about it. The fact that you have that in your arsenal, if in fact that's the term you would use. Most defenses are multiple now, but it's really cool to see them sort of mature in that 4-3 look, because I think it could pay dividends, especially the last game of the regular season. With that said, what anybody would like to see when it comes to Ohio State is win the next two games the way you're supposed to win them.
Yeah.
And then get ready, because there is a challenge coming, man, in this stadium. Indiana is for real.
Yeah.
It has proven that to me. It is not fool's gold. And it's just amazing the way that team is getting better, it looks like, as the season goes on. So, basically beat Purdue like you're expected to beat Purdue, hit a couple of home runs in Wrigley Field, and come back home and take care of Indiana is definitely what's on the table for the Ohio State Buckeyes, who I think really kind of went over an edge on Saturday at Penn State, much like the 2014 team did when it won just a gut check game in overtime over there, just a crazy game. It was never the same team after that. It just kind of took off, and ended up in the national championship game, winning the first college football playoff national championship. This team has all of that going for it, including the fact it has, I think, the best quarterback in the Big Ten. And yeah, you can say, what about Dylan Gabriel? I think he's pretty good. But Will Howard and this team are meshing. You can feel it even when he plays his worst game. They look quite potent on offense. Just couldn't finish a couple.
Yeah, it's interesting that
I'm not gushing about that. Just go back and watch it.
It's interesting that the 2014 team is starting to be the comp here, because at the end of that road, they didn't know that they were going to have to, but at the end of that road, the ultimate goal was to get to that game, and then they played Oregon. And this team right now is not talking about the playoff. We're not talking about the national championship. This team wants to play in the Big Ten championship game so badly, and what's at the end of that road? In all likelihood, it's going to be Oregon. So the parallels are.
It wants to play Oregon again.
Yeah.
You get that sense.
Yeah,
for sure.
the parallels are there in more than one way. Yeah, it's a fun time for these fans right now. Ohio State going to pack this place out at noon on Saturday for Ohio State versus Purdue. This right now is just the Monday after Ohio State. Penn State will be in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday for Ohio State coach Ryan Day's press conference. We'll see who else we talk to for that in the aftermath of Ohio State's win. But now they got to turn the page because Purdue, Northwestern, and then you get the two big ones at the end of the season, like we keep saying. Tim May, the 41-year vet, he'll be there for the whole shebang, the whole
kit and caboodle.
The whole kit and caboodle. There we go. Andy Backstrom, he'll be here as well. The last time we were in this stadium, fellas, I saw a black cat. It was kind of a bad omen after that Nebraska game. Black cat seems to be gone. So maybe the curse has been lifted from this building. We'll see when they play Purdue on Saturday.
Maybe that's what happened to Nebraska. They left their black cat here, and we all saw what happened to them on Saturday.
Yeah, no kidding. Last thing from me before we get out of here. Vote. It's important. Vote. Tim May, Andy Backstrom, Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys Tuesday in the Woody for Ohio State coach Ryan Day's press conference.